Throughout the game, you'd see a couple of cameos here and there. Mega Man X alternate in the first game, Spencer alternate in the Wii version, Arthur costume in the sequel, and others. But besides that, Frank himself would travel across other titles. He first starred as a playable fighter in the reissue of Tatsunoko vs. Capcom and featured plenty of his signature attacks.
That's hilarious! That's great!
He would later make an appearance in the reissue of Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and have even more of his signature attacks, Chuck's paddle saws, and they even managed to include his level up system.
Time to go to town! Die! Goodbye! Dead meat!
His theme song is also a recreation of Adam's theme from the first game. He would also make an appearance in Lost Planet as an extra character. His latest appearance is Project Cross Zone, a collaboration game between Capcom, Namco, and Sega. Frank is paired with the Shenko as a team, shows off a lot of his signature moves, and is the first time he's voiced in Japanese. So it's been almost 3 years since Dead Rising 2. Off the record and the guest appearances are cool and everything, but when are we getting Dead Rising 3 already? There was a rumor here and there, including what was supposedly concept art for the third protagonist, but nothing substantial. Until... Nothing would be concrete until June of 2013, shortly after Microsoft's terrible unveiling of the Xbox One.
Experience. TV and movies, TV. Xbox, watch TV. TV.
Even so, they would have their E3 press conference. Microsoft was still ready to show off some games for their upcoming console, one of those being, you guessed it, these two guys who probably helped make the game or something come on stage during Microsoft's press conference to present what they call the ultimate open world zombie game.
It's 3 days after a massive outbreak in the city of Los Perdidos, and our new hero, Nick Ramos, is trying to escape with his life.
At first, I was like, oh shit, awesome, because I was simply happy that a new Dead Rising game was being developed, but I quickly realized that this was an exclusive title for Xbox One. But more on that later. This was the very first thing we'd see, a gameplay trailer. Good. Not enough announcements do this. You know, show actual gameplay rather than scream for attention using a flashy CG fuckfest. Here they seem to be showing off not just the core gameplay, which is tearing through zombies and picking up whatever you can, but also the technical aspects. The people point out the lack of loading screens between entering buildings. You'll also notice how heavily detailed the zombies are. Of course, when I was watching it, all I really noticed is how gray nearly everything is and how dark all the other colors are. Dead Rising 1 and especially 2 were so bright and vibrant. They almost complement the situation at hand and add to the fact that it's a less serious tone than most zombie-related media. Still, I think the game looked fun, and I liked how you can combine items on the fly rather than requiring a workbench. So, in all honesty, I was really interested, despite that this clearly will be the first game that has no influence from the original creators. But after that pathetic system announcement, I really didn't want an Xbox One. But I'd be lying if I said seeing both Dead Rising 3 as well as Insomniac's games revealing of Sunset Overdrive didn't give me second thoughts. Later on, there would be another trailer, but it's purely CG. You see some zombies that look kinda sad and some ugly guy panicking a lot while he's tearing through them, and not ugly in means of the cast from Dead Rising, ugly as in he doesn't look like a real person. Then Dee Reynolds comes to help him out. Are they pointing out co-op? Is she going to be player 2? Who knows? It's up to them to save this poor city of Grayville from all these zombos. One thing that surprised me is that this game would be a launch title for Xbox One. As soon as the system is out the door, this game is coming along with it. I have to be honest, it's been a long time since I've been even slightly interested in a true blue launch title. So I resist buying an Xbox One, for about a month. Of course, I get this game along with it because there was nothing else. Killer Instinct is boring, the new Zoo Tycoon is complete garbage, Rise is a fucking joke, and Forza is... Forza. Dead Rising 3 was the only launch title I found appealing in any sort of way. It has a PC port now, but I've made my awful decisions, so I'm going to stick with them. Alright, time for the main event, the reason I decided to make this retrospect in the first place. Dead Rising 3 for Xbox One. This game would take place in an entire city called Los Perdidos, or The Lost. The city is enormous with 4 main districts, all connected to 3 big highways, easily bigger than Fortune City and Willamette Mall combined. So, that's awesome. Let's talk about the changes they've made for this installment. Zombies are fucking everywhere. According to sources, the zombie limit is multiplied by 3 of Dead Rising's 2 limit, so that makes about 20,000 on screen, give or take. The zombies also feel like they actually have weight and mass to them. Running through them in vehicles actually slows you down. Zombies also flop around like, well, dead bodies thanks to a ragdoll effect when you're tearing through them. So yeah, physics were definitely improved. Speaking of the zombies, there's a much bigger variety in their appearance. It's tough finding 2 lookalikes near each other most of the time. They can also split apart in different ways, and if you look closely, you can see their organs. No longer are they full of red sponge like in the previous entries. Among the regular zombos, there's uncommon enemies. Biker hicks, special forces, fireman zombies that seem flame retardant, police zombies that can take a few more hits, humongous convict zombies that hit for more damage and take more hits to kill, and what they call queen zombies. They aren't very strong but explode on death, which hurts anyone around it, including yourself. You don't need a maintenance room to make combo weapons. You can literally combine weapons anywhere at any point of the game. There's a huge list of combo weapons as well. Finishing the game the first time, I only managed to attain about a third of the available combos. Although, you can't make any combinations without first having the blueprint for it. You can also combine certain combined weapons, combining them into even more devastating combinations. Combine, 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 combine. There's also connect features. Turned them off because they're all stupid. You also don't have just one safe room like in the previous entries. Multiple safe houses are scattered around the city itself, and you have to reclaim most of them from either zombies or gang members. Inside all of these safe rooms are a save point, a weapons locker, a survivor storage bulletin board, and a clothing drawer. Everything you pick up, combine, and download will be available in these safe houses. Same can be said about any article of clothing you try on in the city. Vehicles play a much bigger role in Dead Rising 3. There's many different kinds you can access across the map. A couple of garages that work in the same way that weapons lockers do, and the ability to combine vehicles up the variety even more. PP and leveling up is still a big part of the game, but they changed how you level up the character. Instead of random abilities or upgrades when you level up, you receive attribute points in which you apply to these bars, life, inventory, and so on. Now you control what you get next, more or less. There's also these little things up top, but I don't really condone them. All they really do is make the required items for certain combined weapons less strict, thus making the game easier. This game is easy enough, but we'll save the difficulty talk for later when I'm criticizing the game. Trust me, there's plenty of room to criticize. There's a lot of different ways to earn PP as well, using weapons, helping survivors, finding what they call tragic endings, picking up golden Frank West statues across the entire city, and more. The time limit for the main campaign was 3 days in the previous main titles. In this, it's extended to 6 days. Controls have been changed. Instead of clicking around using the shoulder buttons to get through the inventory, it's a wheel on the bottom right accessed by holding the right bumper and moving the right stick to pick up what you want. You can also use the right bumper to simply click through your inventory. This frees up the left bumper, so it's set as a sprint button. Yep, all games need it these days, I guess. X is still used for attacking, but the call command that used to be Y or triangle has been removed. It's now heavy attack, and holding down Y is for ground attacks. Special moves you learned in previous games such as disembowel and suplex are no longer free for you to use anytime. Now you build up a kills combo, and when you reach 10 kills in the combo, you hit Y and B to do the special attack. Whatever special move you pull off depends on which direction you're holding. This concept really started hitting other games when it appeared in Batman Arkham Asylum. There is a significantly smaller amount of survivors to escort. In Dead Rising 2, there was about 60 to help. In this, there's about 25. They work differently though. Along with that, there are survivors you help clear zombies. Once you finish helping them, they go on their own and only give you extra PP. But when the survivor does join you, you can go to any safe room you have full access to and store them in this magic bulletin board. Okay. From this board, you can have them stored in there or have them come out of any safe house and help you out at any point in the game. Considering how much health they have, you don't really have to babysit them at all. The survivor AI is even more competent than last time, only adding to their independence. Some of your upgrades aid them as well. Saving is incredibly fast, takes less than a second. Photography was removed. Again. Jeez, make up your mind, Capcom. No sort of sandbox mode or infinity mode, which is somewhat understandable. Considering how easy it is to explore the city within the story mode, you're granted so much time in the campaign itself. And there's already challenges scattered across the city marked with stars on the map that are like the sandbox mode challenges. Still, I really do miss Infinity Mode. It was fun, and its mechanics were challenging, and the changes made it very unique to the main campaign. The money system was also removed. I guess they couldn't have figured any sort of way to viably excuse the idea of looters like in Dead Rising 2, or even something silly like the merchant in Resident Evil 4. Boss fights seem to be a bit more intricate, and you're always closed off into an area, which was usually not the case for previous games. Each of them have little quicktime events like this, and give you an opportunity to inflict extra damage to them. Co-op mode is also included. Second player takes the role of Dick, who actually appears in some of the cutscenes. He plays exactly like Nick, but all of his responses in situations are completely different, even when talking to survivors.
Okay, hot stuff, here's your gear. Can I talk to Annie now?
Whenever you join a co-op match, any collectibles you find such as blueprints and statues get transferred to your main file, as well as your PP and level progression. Lastly, there's utilizing the Smart Glass app for Xbox One. Early in the game, you find a communicator, and the game prompts that this is the point where you can use what they call the ZDC app. Within this app is a few nice additions to the game. For one, it provides you a live map at all times, so you don't have to keep hitting select in order to get a better view of the map. Second, the app receives emails and profiles of certain characters, such as psychopaths. These are full of information that is nowhere to be found within the game itself. In a way, this app provides more lore to your adventure. And when it's not fucking up, anything spoken through the communicator is now coming through your mobile device via Smart Glass, and it provides you missions which can only be accessed through the app. Obviously just a way to entice players to use it in the first place. You can also call airstrikes with the app, which I don't recommend. It's stupid and causes the app to stop functioning 100% of the time. At least for me it did, even after the many game updates. That's everything the gameplay has to offer for this title. Now for the story itself. 10 years have passed since the events of Dead Rising 2. The main character is Nick Ramos, a rather young, skilled mechanic and handyman. He meets with a group of survivors surrounded by zombies in a diner. Two people decide to be stupid and die, status quo so far. This girl Annie applies some Zombrex to herself, which sets Rhonda off.
Or to a look outside.
You illegals are nothing but trouble.
Huh? Oh, not that kind of illegal. Illegals in the world of Dead Rising 3 are people that have not received the implant of what they call the Zombrex chips, which is required by law at this point. So Annie leaves. Dick determines to be irrelevant, being one of the 3 people left at the diner. They also decide to make a run for the Rentrorama garage. Later on in the garage, a news report emphasizes on how getting chipped is the law. Sergeant Hemlock, in an interview, reveals that they have decided to firebomb all of Los Perdidos in 6 days. They see a quarantine station at Production Bridge, but aren't sure how to get there since the town is overrun. Nick helps them think of a plan as he combines 2 vehicles to make one big armored bastard. When they get to the bridge though, it's too late. It seems like the military that didn't become zombies abandoned the station. Then suddenly this biker gang comes in to terrorize them. They also meet a dumpy fellow known as Diego. You also get to hear the voice actor for Nick attempt Spanish.
Diego, pongo su arma. Soy yo, Nick.
Diego lets them know about the plane that they could possibly use to escape. But oh no, a zombie bites Nick, and Dick immediately gives Nick his regards.
It was real nice knowing you, pal.
Rhonda tells Nick that he needs to find Zombrex as soon as possible, and that the morgue is the best bet. As Nick gets there, he meets Wreck-It Ralph, but he calls himself Gary. Ralph mentions something about working for some big boss, and that he needs to look for a girl that may be there. He also shows Nick the queen trick. They find the possibly right girl, which Nick makes note that it looked like Annie, but Nick learns that there's no Zombrex in the building. It turns out Nick is fine though. His wound from the bite is healing over very quickly. They leave to the Diamond Panty, which is where Wreck-It Ralph's boss is staying at. At the bar, Nick tunes into another news report that claims the quarantine stations are successfully evacuating survivors, but Nick already knows that can't be true. The girl they got wasn't the right one, so Ralph asks Nick if he can bring back Annie to see if she's the one he's looking for. Ralph says his boss can give Nick whatever he needs if he helps him. Nick decides to see if he can find out where Annie went. Nick and Diego meet Rhonda and Dick at the garage, and Dick points out their numeric tattoos.
You guys almost have the same tattoo.
Yeah. Don't know what it means. We've had it ever since we can remember.
Rhonda lets Nick know if he looks in the safe zones with a certain marking, he should be able to find Annie. Nick heads to a safe house and meets Pierce from Saints Row, but he calls himself Red.
All in due time, my brother. Are you a friend or a foe?
What's the hate? Beer's cheap, and I'm the best looking motherfucker in here.
He's leading a ragtag team of survivors who call themselves realists, who are trying to uncover the whole thing and they believe the government is hiding things. He finds Annie there too, who apparently is already aware that someone is looking for her. Pierce already doesn't trust Nick. He sends Nick off to do some fetch quests, which is all Nick is good for. After Nick does those dumb fetch quests, they find a lead on some evidence to support their theories. Pierce asks Nick if he can go to the police station to look for it. Nick heads there, as told, and sees some police officer who thinks she's a Final Fight enemy.
I want to put it somewhere safe.
She's also stashing evidence and murdering innocent survivors.
Let's see if he stands up to the test, or limps out at the end.
Get in here, boys! Move, move, move! Make this a game, man!
After some shitty sexual dialogue that can put the Dead Rising 2 twins to shame, it's fight time. After Nick defeats her, he finds the evidence and runs off to meet with the realist. Back at the safe house, Ralph comes to take Annie himself. Then an ambush ambushes the ambush. Special forces take everyone away but Nick. Pierce returns just to be too late. They devise a plan to rescue them since they're imprisoned at a taxi station on the other side of the town. As Nick infiltrates the taxi station, he sees Marion from Case West. He also witnesses them forcefully zombifying the president. We also see Marion apply herself Zombrex, but I thought she was already cured. Oh well. Nick frees the realist and Ralph as Pierce helps them get to an escape van. Nick, Pierce, and Ralph stay behind as the rest escape. Pierce lets Nick know that the military are specifically looking for people with numeric tattoos on their necks.
You need to come clean with me. What's this all about?
I swear, Red, I have no idea.
Extremely dangerous, my ass.
Nick gets a lead on fuel and picks it up, finding a zombie that seems to be a walking beehive. He escapes back to the garage to deliver the gas. Rhonda tells him that Diego left, so Nick goes off to find him. He finds Diego going nuts at the museum, but comes to his senses when Nick defeats him.
I'm so sorry I had to do that to you, please. Get up, bud. Oh, jeez, Nick. What was that you were saying, about your mama?
About your mama? My mother used to say that to me. About the only thing I can remember when I was a little kid.
In the museum, Diego takes them to a desperate tie-ins room where you see little history lessons of previous characters like Frank and Chuck, complete with cardboard stands? Oh, come the fuck on. What kind of history museum is this supposed to be? They would have an actual portrait or professional photos of said characters up on there. And how lazy of them to use old official art for these characters. I don't know whether or not it's supposed to be funny, but it's not. This is such a shitty example of breaking the fourth wall, if that's the case. But anyway, they recap a bit of the first game and Diego shows Nick a picture of another person, now zombified, with a numeric tattoo like theirs. Plot thickens, I guess. They get back to the plane, but shortly go back out to find more plane parts.
Are you sure he's stable?
Yeah, he's totally fine. I think.
Once Nick goes back with the new parts, the plane is practically good to go, but Rhonda wants to go look for her ex-husband. Shortly after, special forces take him and Diego away.
No! Diego!
Nick wakes up in some testing lab and Marion ordering those doctors or whatever to test some lasers, which causes some snake-looking worms to come out. killing Diego. This causes chaos in the testing lab, giving Nick a chance to escape. He finds a means to escape in the lab and runs into Isabella from the first game. And Nick is so mad at how poorly she aged. Oh wait.
You killed my friend Diego!
I am no terrorist. The world has been lied to about me for so long. I will change that with you.
Nick decides to cooperate with her when she claims she knows everything about the virus as well as Nick's apparent immunity. Marion separates them, but not before they devise a place to rendezvous. Once Nick defeats her claws, he gets away from the underground lab and goes back to the club Wreck-It Ralph is in order to get Annie back. Ralph breaks down and reveals that Rhonda is his ex-wife. This opens up a branch where you can either kill him to get Annie or go back to Rhonda and let her know where her husband is. We'll go with the latter, of course. Nick goes back to the shop but sees Rhonda's arm got torn off. After you patch her up, you let her know about Ralph. She doesn't want to go to him before you make her look better. And by that, they mean give her a new flamethrower arm. Yeah, badass.
Ready to rumble.
Once you reach Ralph, he's overjoyed and even loves her new upgrade.
You're even hotter.
Inside, you find Annie and act awkward as hell.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
We should definitely do stuff, leave or something.
I was just gonna say that.
I'm just really happy you keep showing up.
Aw, how cute. They get back to the plane, as well as Pierce and Isabella. Annie demands answers from her. She gives them a bit of recap on the zombies' origins. A bit of new info, but not much, such as where the orphans came from that Carlito planted the virus in. Nick is number 12 on that list, but... wait a second, 12 was a girl. What the fuck? Anyway, Nick was basically a safety that provides a cure, so he's pretty damn valuable, and a zombie movie cliche. Pierce calls out for everyone, but it turns out it's a trap! He betrays all of them, traps Isabella and Annie in order to go against Nick and take him in himself for... money. Then they share a cliche kiss. Aww. Oh, but look who it is!
Katie! Katie!
Oh my god. Dad?
And that's the big twist. Annie was Katie the whole time. Chuck was Ralph's boss and looking for Katie these past 2 years.
Katie Ann Green, where have you been? I lost my mind when you ran away.
Shit, that's real cute, ain't it? Ooh, I love a happy ending.
Chuck and Isabella recognize each other as well. This confirms that Case West is canonical.
Your face.
Dr. Malin was always envious of me. At least I can still walk.
They all head back to the plane, but it seems they can't take everyone. Rhonda and Ralph volunteer to stay behind, so they set sail. Yeah, that sounds right. And the credits roll as you hear this... can I even call it music? It's just random synth and muttering. After the credits, you can watch them loop over and over, or skip ahead and start overtime mode. Nick hears what the special forces are planning to do to the city, so they're collecting queens in order to contain the disease itself and control more outbreaks. Nick gets the idea that stopping them can stop the virus right here, for some reason. So with Chuck on your side, you pursue Marion Hemlock, who tries to make a pass at her.
Oh, don't be so pathetic. You're so weak. You make me sick.
Well, that was excessive. So once you thwart Hemlock's plans, his only way out of here crashes down. It's final boss fight time. Bam! Hemlock gets grinded up into pieces and Nick waits for the plane to come pick them up.
I was worried, Nick. I can't lose you now.
Don't worry. You won't.
The events show that this led development of a new permanent cure for the virus. Then you see the same credits and some actual music. Then another post-credits scene. It's footage of Isabella and Marion. In the past footage, Isabella seems to be convincing Marion to start a new outbreak in Los Perdidos. Isabella wanted to do it in order to lure Nick out. She wants to retrieve the cure and make it herself. And something about restoring the key's name?
I'm going to make up for what my brother did and restore the good name of our family. Be a hero for once and for all time. Not that Frank West, not this Chuck Green. He left me to die once.
Where is this coming from? After all that, Isabella destroys the presumably last piece of evidence and leaves. And that's the story. That was pretty terrible, but oh well. Still, I like that a couple of characters returned to make some tie-ins. I feel their way of leaving it open for a sequel came out of nowhere though. Isabella didn't seem to really care about her family's reputation at all in the previous games. Her only priority was to help people after she witnessed how much of terror and turmoil her and Carlito caused with their revenge plan. Now she suddenly cares about her and her brother's reputation? Never mind, the key's name most likely ends with her, so what's the point? Anyway, enough about the story. Let's talk about the good and oh so bad when it comes to the gameplay. First off, things I like. The controls are very good. They nearly perfected it at this point. There's so many new weapons and combinations, and I think finding blueprints and being able to create your newly discovered weapon combination immediately is a much better system than randomly finding and earning combo cards. Nick is much more agile than Frank and Chuck. Sprint button helps that. Also, being able to climb on top of buildings and vehicles easily is good. Opens up the world even more than the last two games. It doesn't feel slow or sluggish like Dead Rising 2 did. In fact, the game feels almost relentless most of the time and possibly more hectic than the first game. Tearing through zombies is a lot more satisfying since they have a ragdoll effect. They're much more detailed, you can see their insides and they seem much more bunched together than in the previous titles. I like that every single piece of dialogue now includes voice acting, which was never included when it came to helping out survivors.
Were you born out of the country? Ain't you never seen a monster truck show?
I guess they were really taking advantage of how much space the Xbox One game disc had. The AI system only saw more improvements, since survivors can really maintain their own. It's pretty fun when you have 7 of them around you and all attacking the same horde. I guess that's everything I thought was really good for this entry. Let's dive into what I find to be its flaws. Probably the most ultimately disappointing part of this game is the fact that it's easy as shit. The only portion that isn't such a cakewalk is some of the bosses, but helping survivors to safety was effortless and I never worried about zombie encounters. I never even died on my first run. Save points are not only everywhere, but the game automatically saves whenever you clear a campaign mission, and you can simply save at the pause menu. While there is a high amount of weapon combinations, a few too many feel exactly the same. A lot of them reuse the same exact attacks and execution animations. Books are still in this, but they no longer take part of your inventory. Whenever you find one, you keep it in a separate section and simply select which one you want to take effect. And if you level up enough, you can just have all of them equipped. This is one of the many examples of the developers forgetting what the original game stood for. It takes no thought process or worry when thinking about these books. It was simply another perk. The weapons lockers take a huge part of the blame for this game's lack of difficulty as well. There's plenty of times when I was playing both of the previous games encountering either huge waves of zombies or certain psychopaths, and I either lose my weapons or they break, so I have to resort to using something near me. It plays on the idea of using anything as a weapon, something the original game really marketed towards and something I really enjoyed in the series. But in this game, you can just go to the weapons locker, pick up 4 copies of your favorite weapon, and when you're fighting a boss, you could be like, oh, I ran out of Zara ammo? That's okay, I bought more. Make the game more challenging by ignoring the weapons locker. It really should have been some sort of New Game Plus feature, not an intentional mechanic for the campaign. While zombies are everywhere, so are decent to overpowered weapons. Even items that were originally shit like the 2x4 can be viable in this game, if not destructive. Your blocks of health are also much thicker. Originally, whenever a zombie did grab you, you instantly lose a whole block even if you push them off immediately. Dead Rising 2 did not have that occur as much, but it can still happen. In this, getting rid of a zombie quickly means virtually no damage. The developers were even asked by the fans why they made the game so easy. All they did say was, for the casual audience, and extended that into a paragraph. They mentioned Nightmare Mode, but I honestly think that isn't enough. The developers strongly assured that Nightmare Mode would be the real Dead Rising experience. So how about I shut the hell up and just play that if I find the game too easy? Well, the zombies and bosses hit harder, so I guess that's good. Doesn't really make a difference if you can clear them easily. Problem is the time aspect. They said that this time goes by faster, basically giving people the same amount of time as the previous games, which was 72 hours. Well, it looks like someone needs a lesson in math. Normal mode gives you 6 days, or 144 hours. You make it run at 4 times the speed, which is what Nightmare mode does, and you get 36 hours of the normal time to clear the campaign. In Dead Rising 1 and 2, they gave you just enough time to complete every single mission if you choose to. It's tough, but possible. In this, there is almost no time in general. Even between the breaks, which is when the only thing to do is explore, there is no time and it's over before you leave your current district. So the only possible way I can see someone completing every single side quest and every single rescue in Nightmare mode is if they have a co-op partner and both of them know exactly what they need to do to help each individual survivor before they even talk to them. I wouldn't know, because I barely know any fans of Dead Rising in the first place, never mind anyone that owns an Xbox One, so the last thing I have is a reliable partner. So yeah, I can see why they wanted to include Nightmare mode, to please entitled people like me. The zombies' aggressiveness and damage output is a little better, but the time factor is the problem. I guess you can call it artificial difficulty. As for the world itself, it looks so dreary and boring. One thing I liked about Dead Rising 1 and 2 is how big and bright the world was. It complemented the situation everyone is in and just looked appealing. In Dead Rising 3, it looks like Camden with the saturation turned down. I understand the psychopaths in this title deal with plenty of criticism, something about them not being as enjoyable because most of them were ranging from blatant stereotypes to borderline racism. Yeah, because the idea that didn't exist at all in the fucking titles before it, right?
Bunch of whiners let this thing happen. Letting zombies in, foreigners in, letting socialism in.
Idiots. Even so, I still feel like they could have done better with some of these bosses. I mean, some of them provide a decent challenge, but their personalities just aren't there. A lot of the bosses from the previous games went completely paranoid or simply lose their sanity due to the epidemic. Adam, for example, seemed frightened by the zombies. He was using the ride as a means of keeping them away, seeing Frank as a threat since he was trying to turn it off. He also lamented that this outbreak took away his audience as well as the kids he used to bring so much joy to. Cliff was stuck in a flashback from his war days. It was his mind trying to escape after witnessing his granddaughter getting killed by the zombies. And Chuck in Off the Record. Oh man.
I can't imagine what I would do if anything ever happened to you.
But these psychopaths in the third game, pretty much all of them are just taking advantage of the situation or don't care about what's going on. None of them are really that compelling. I mean, you can feel kinda bad for Mr. Miyagi over here since he expresses how his life went to shit, but that's the one and only example. The rest are just complete jerks. I can't even rightfully call them psychopaths. These bosses are just assholes. All the deadly sins are represented through the bosses as well. You got greed, lust, rage, greed again, sloth, midlife crisis, true sloth, and probably the rest. And another thing I think really needs criticizing, Nick, the protagonist. He is easily the least likable character in the entire franchise. Yeah, I'm not just talking about the main characters, I mean every single character, period. Fucking Paul the Arsonist is more likable than this kid. All he does is panic from beginning to end. It's pathetic. In situations where Frank would have stood his ground while still trying to reason with the threat, or Chuck would just be silent if not say something cheesy, Nick just gets scared, or says something stupid.
Really are indeed gigantic, sir. God, not a sir, man.
Frank and Chuck have the personalities of leading roles in action movies. Nick is far from that. He's more the bumbling buffoon secondary role from romantic comedies. Oh, and literally 100% of the time, Nick's expression on his face is always a hint of worry. No, really, he always looks worried or scared, even when he isn't. He looks like Jaden Smith. While he's the main protagonist, he spends most of his time simply taking orders. Frank and Chuck usually had their own agenda and made their own decisions. Nobody asked Frank to go help Brad, he insisted on it. Nobody told him to pursue Isabella for answers, he went on his own to do so. Chuck, while he was directed where to go a decent amount of the time, went on his own accord. He wasn't Stacy's errand boy. Just about all of his actions were for the sake of himself or his daughter. Stacy was helping Chuck clear his name after all. Nick? You tell him to jump, he jumps. Hey fuckface, go find me these things and come back, you dumb idiot. Dick, the second player character, is so much cooler and funnier than him. I wish there was a way we can just play as him instead, and he gets the girl, and he saves the day, and he's the real hero.
Ooh, I love a happy ending.
My last complaint is that this really stopped being survival horror in just about every extent. I don't know, shit like Wikipedia typically lists this game under survival horror, but I'm more used to survival horror games actually being, I don't know, difficult. Still, I think it has a better idea of what survival horror games are than other games that think it's about having the opportunity to restart immediate scenarios, placing ladders on things, and being able to see threats through walls. But I digress. This still feels more like an action game than anything else. While Dead Rising 2 tried to be a lot like 1, this is the point where it strays away from the idea and changes its focus. Whatever that focus is, it isn't survival horror. Still, it's nice to see survival horror start to come around these days. Not to say there aren't terrible ones out there. Yeah, survival horror really took a nosedive after Dead Rising 1 for some reason. Dead Rising 3 isn't terrible by any means, this game is still fun. It's just disheartening how much it truly turned its back against what the previous two titles stood for. And for what? So people who don't like challenging games can like it more? Whatever, I guess that's the mentality a lot of developers have these days. It's sad, but I guess I have to deal with it. Or just not buy it. Dead Rising is no stranger to downloadable content. In the first game, there was a bunch of costumes you could download that were free. In Dead Rising 2 and Off the Record, you can download costumes that gave you perks as well as some bonus weapons. But at a cost. Dead Rising 3, however, succumbs to the basic methods these days that pump DLC into the game to squeeze customers and their wallets even drier. Firstly, all Microsoft-published Xbox One launch titles had two different versions you can buy in stores for a limited time starting at the initial launch. Besides the terrible box art, the difference is that Day 1 provided you bonus downloadable content for the game. In Dead Rising 3, it would be alternate costumes and bonus weapons that represent both Frank West and Chuck Green. Oh hell yeah, Chuck's paddle saws! And Frank's zombie slugger? Okay, he never used that. In fact, this piece of DLC is the weapon's debut. I guess a baseball bat was too basic. You can also purchase a season pass that was available the same day the game and console were released. Yes, it followed those awful footsteps preceded by the likes of Mortal Kombat 9, Max Payne 3, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, and many more. Never mind the fact that this bullshit gets pressed on you when you're dense enough to still buy these games from GameStop. When you purchase a game, they always push you to buy a season pass or any DLC if it's available for the game. Some employees are more ravenous for those DLC sales as if commission still existed for them. As an ex-employee of GameStop, I can say that I hated being demanded by higher-ups to push this shit on customers. There's nothing dumber than buying downloadable content for a game you don't even know you like yet. But that's a whole different story. Back to this game's DLC. The one thing Capcom said about the upcoming DLC was going to be extra chapters that expanded upon the main game's story. It would also have brand new weapons and vehicles for you to use by the new playable characters in each DLC chapter, as well as with Nick in the main campaign. Nick would also receive some new alternate costumes as well. Sounds like a good idea, and some of the weapons and vehicles do end up being pretty cool, but the missions aren't any different from the main campaigns at all, and the stories are mostly trash. They all feature characters you run into at some point in the main campaign, and all their stories do is emphasize their completely irrelevant backgrounds. First DLC was Operation Eagle. Did you really give a shit about the commander you most likely killed within seconds of his appearance? Probably not. Fallen Angel. Did you really care about the lady you were supposed to meet but was already dead? Probably not. Chaos Rising. How about the redneck biker that served as the first main boss? Probably not. The Last Agent. The agent you're supposed to give Zombrex to as the last Smart Glass mission? Okay, this one gets a pass because most people probably didn't run into him in the first place. His role is interesting because of his line of work, and his story continues past where the main story ends. Besides progressing through their story-based missions, there are also side missions that add origin stories to certain scenarios, such as the Eagle DLC, where you get to see how the safe houses got infected in the first place. So yeah, while it wasn't entirely worthless, I felt this was truly wasted potential. There are no new psychopaths in any of these chapters, you can't change clothes, and there's no new areas to explore. All these new characters have their own little phrases and do not have terrible personalities like Nick. So why couldn't they have given us a bit more bang for our buck and at least let us pick them as co-op partners when we play with other people online? Sure, it wouldn't make sense, but who really cares? You know, maybe you can't beat Case West, but the least you can do is try. Oh, but I forgot something, didn't I? Yes, indeed. So, to my surprise, Capcom Vancouver wasn't done with this game quite yet. At Microsoft's press conference at E3 2014, Capcom announced a fifth piece of DLC known as Yeah, that. Man, I bet the developers can't even say that without messing up.
I'm Scott McGillivray. I am the lead programmer on Super Ultra Dead Rising 3 Arcade Remix Hyper Edition EX Plus Alpha.
Well, shit. And thankfully, this DLC was actually really cool. It's a separate mode that seems like a successor to TIR mode from the original Dead Rising 2. It has more of an arcade feel to it though, as you can plainly see. It's a competitive co-op game up to 4 players that consists of 4 different sets of minigames that occur in 4 different districts of Los Perdidos. It's all different kinds of minigames, some that even change up the camera angle to be homages to older arcade titles. While there aren't really any new areas, they sure do look new. Brand new. It's a super colorful 80s style, reminds me of what Double Dragon Neon looked like. All the blood and gore has been removed as well, replaced with all these flashy video game-esque effects. A lot of sound effects have been replaced too. You get to play as 4 Dead Rising characters, Nick and Chuck as he appeared in Dead Rising 2, and Frank. Yep, he makes an appearance for this generation and... God, can they stick to one fucking look? They are clearly never happy with the way he looks. All 4 characters have 5 different outfits, nearly all of them being homages to classic Capcom superstars. Each of them have their own attributes, movesets, voice clips, and super moves. Huh, Tuxedo Nick's moves seem kind of familiar. Each match consists of 5 rounds, each which have their own objectives, from slaying zombies to smashing down gates and saving 2D people? Alright. While all your scores are pooled together to achieve a final grade, each player is ranked between 1st and 4th place. You gain score from achieving the objective as well as killing enemies and finding items. All of the music has been replaced by renditions of Capcom's older 2D titles such as Mega Man and Street Fighter. Not a whole lot to this separate mode, but it's really cool. The style of the game feels like it's Capcom Vancouver responding to all the criticism they received for their pitiful, grey gloom environment, as well as Capcom's younger days when they were booming in the arcade department. So, it's been about 8 years and 3 main games. What is there for Dead Rising now? To be honest, I think 3 is as far as the bare bones concept can go. I mean, we went from a mall to a huge strip plaza to an entire town. I don't think their intention next is a state or space. How about a portable spin-off that is a 2D overhead game, plays a lot like Hotline Miami? I think Dead Rising can work like that. Oh, but let's face it, they're probably going to rehash the game too. I honestly think Dead Rising 3 off the record is next. What is the future of Dead Rising though? Will they go straight to 4? Will they rehash 3 some more? I don't have much else to say. It went from being a not so traditional survival horror game to just being a plain old action game. And really thinking about it, I seem to have a love-hate relationship with zombies. While I seem to like plenty of games full of them, it's zombies in TV shows and movies I can't really stand. It could just be me getting tired of the concept and cliches that come along with it, but that's neither here nor there. I'm sure Capcom has no intention of stopping the series here. The company categorized it as their 5th most powerful franchise. Granted that Devil May Cry has 4th place secure with almost twice as many sales units. Even so, it shows that the series is strong, especially in this day and age for a Japanese game company. Capcom may piss me off with some of its terrible, awful decisions, but I can't help but have a soft spot for Dead Rising, as well as Monster Hunter. All faults aside, I enjoyed Dead Rising 3 and look forward to what it has to offer next. Still, part of me hopes Capcom Vancouver puts things like challenge into consideration for a new title. Not sure if it's entitlement, but I can't help it. I adored Dead Rising the first time I started playing it. It's when the 7th generation truly started for me at the time. I thought it was going to be survival horror really taking stride as a genre. A silly thought now, of course. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this retrospect. Here's to Dead Rising and hopefully better decisions in the future.